There's a world where Shedeur Sanders falls to the second round. Would you take him at 33? I know I would. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. If Shedeur Sanders falls to 33, the Browns should be running to the podium to hand in his name. There's nothing wrong with drafting 2 quarterbacks this week, and draft night could be the perfect opportunity to trade Greg Newsome, potentially. I'm assuming it's not going to happen, though. I do want to thank you for being every day with the Locked On Browns podcast and making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed, with bonus content on some weekends as well. And it's totally free to you. All you got to do is hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you listen to your podcast. And, of course, at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel, where you can also get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comments section. This is your team, so be part of the conversation every single day. And yes, I am excited as we get closer and closer to the start of the NFL draft on Thursday night. And the draft conversation does roll on here. And I'm excited that we'll actually get a chance to talk about actual players here in the coming days. But another hypothetical situation that I've been thinking about, especially this week, because it's a hypothetical that feels like there's a chance it could actually happen. Because at this point, all bets are off as to where Shedeur Sanders is going to go. The indications are it's not going to be number 2 with the Browns. It's not going to be number 3 with the Giants. The Saints seem like they could be in play. Maybe the Jets at 7, a couple picks earlier. But the Saints seem like they could be in play. But every single mock I've seen this week has the Saints taking Tyler Warren, going offense, but not necessarily going quarterback. And they're going to figure that thing out differently. Maybe they have their eyes on a different quarterback later on in the draft. But Shedeur Sanders, if he makes it out of the top 10, could end up slipping to the late first round, early second round. And we've been talking so much about the possibility of somebody trading up for Shedeur and maybe even the Browns being part of that conversation. But we haven't talked about the possibility that, like, what if he does actually slide out of the first round entirely and he's there on day 2 to start things off with a chance for the Browns to take him? Would you do it? And it's a complicated question, I think, because there's people that are, I think, in 2 boats when it comes to Shedeur. He's very divisive and very controversial in this way. There's one camp like me that believes, look, I think he's good enough as a player to be a first round pick. Not at 2. I wouldn't take him at 2. And I understand as the process is played out and hearing what, is being reported about how scouts feel about him and all these things, I understand why he's not worth the number 2 pick. And, I can wrap my head around that. And I too would take somebody like Travis Hunter over him because of where the Browns are drafting. And that's what it comes down to. Where the Browns are drafting is the key here. If they were drafting them anywhere else outside of the top, like 4 or 5 picks, I think you could get away with taking Shedeur. But because they're at 2, you have your choice of like 2 to 3 blue chip players. And so you have to take one of those guys over Shedeur Sanders, who obviously has some noticeable things that he's going to have to work on at the next level and some shortcomings in his game that concern people at the NFL level. I understand all those things. So I'm fine with Shedeur not being taken at 2. But the idea that he would slip to 33 entices me. And because I think Shedeur I'm a Shedeur truther, if you will. I would be running to the podium if he's there at 33. But the reason I say it's complicated is Shedeur is very divisive as a player in general. And there's a lot of fans, I think, who are just out on him because of his personality and because of who his father is. And there's just certain parts of his game that they don't like. And they say, yeah, I wouldn't take him. I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. And I disagree. Because I think he fits Kevin Stefanski's offense and what they want to do. I think he's probably the most, especially mentally prepared to compete at the NFL level, even more so than like a Cam Ward, who's considered the best prospect quarterback-wise in this draft. And obviously the Titans have basically told everybody they're taking him. So with all that in mind, I'm on board with Shedeur at some point. But I know there's a lot of people who aren't and who are just straight up out on Shedeur Sanders. And because people are in their camps on these different quarterbacks that they like over Shedeur Sanders, I think if you got to 33 and he was still there, there would still be a number of people, even though that would feel like good value for Shedeur. There are a lot of people who I do think would still rather have like a Jalen Milroe or a Jackson Dart. Maybe you're somebody who falls into that bucket who wants any quarterback other than Shedeur Sanders. The conversation on Sanders versus somebody like Milroe at 33 is fascinating because the value, I think, at that point is there for Sanders. You're getting him in the second round. I also think there's less pressure for a guy to meet some crazy expectation when you're taking a guy in the second round versus if you're taking him in the first round or especially if you're taking him in like the top 10 picks per se, because that's supposed to be your franchise guy. But at 33, yes, you still want that guy to pan out as a pick. But there's like, if you miss on that player, you're not necessarily getting fired for that if you hit on a bunch of the other players, if you understand what I'm saying. Like you take a quarterback in the second round, understanding like there's flaws there. You're hoping that they become something. And that kind of leans into this conversation though, because again, Shedeur Sanders fits perfectly with what the Browns want to do, but lower ceiling, I think, overall than somebody like Milroe, who, as I've said numerous times, I'm not on board with in terms of a prospect. I don't think he's going to correct the accuracy issues that he has in his game and some of the technical problems that he has in his game enough to be a viable quarterback at the NFL. But as I've been saying in recent weeks, the ceiling on Milroe is the highest of any of these players because of that elite athleticism. His ability to potentially be like use that to his advantage and have this trait that other guys just don't have makes him have a higher ceiling overall. And so if you're taking a guy in the second round, if you're taking a guy in the third round, you sort of want somebody that you could become a slam dunk potentially, even though you understand there's flaws there and he might not become that guy. And so I can understand the argument there and the debate there. I still lean in the idea that Shedeur is the best fit for the Browns and what Kevin Stefanski wants to do. I also think he's, again, mentally especially, the most ready for this stage. And because and part of that is because of who his father is. But because of that, like, this Browns team is in a situation where they might be drafting a quarterback again next year. And I've been saying it for a while now. You're going to see all these quarterbacks play next year. Flacco's going to start. I'm assuming Flacco's going to play. Kenny Pickett's going to play. Whatever rookie they draft is going to play because they need to get some sort of evaluation on who that player is and what they bring to the table before they turn the corner in the next year's draft and decide, do we have to take another quarterback? So understanding all those things, like I want somebody who's maybe more equipped to be ready to play now so you get a better picture of who they are rather than like if you get Milroe, like there's a developmental process that has to go on. And this regime might not be there to see it all the way through. That's not a reason not to take him. But I'm just saying, like, if you draft him, you won't get the clearest of pictures by the end of the season of who he is unless he plays from week one. And I don't think that's going to be the case because I don't think he's going to be ready to play from week one. So if it's up to me, and if Shedeur Sanders somehow does slip out of the first round and nobody trades up to get him, day two, run into the podium, hand in the card for Shedeur Sanders because I think he's worth it. And I understand the brashness that people bring up, the attitude part of it. I get why that rubs some people the wrong way. I think a quarterback in Cleveland needs that though, because frankly, you know the jersey that's in that window with all the names on it. To overcome something like that, that's just plagued history of quarterbacks in Cleveland. You need somebody who's up to that task. You need somebody who's not like gonna feel any sort of pressure because there is a pressure that comes with being the quarterback in Cleveland. It's not like New York or LA, or maybe not even LA. That's a terrible example. LA is a terrible example because in LA, their fan base doesn't really give a rip. But you know what I mean? Like there's certain markets where there's just extra pressure and added pressure. And New York is one of those. Philly probably is another one of those, right? Where there's just outside pressure from fans. Here, it's not so much like pressure in like a negative way where fans are like constantly, on you. I mean, they can be, but it's more so just like trying to fulfill that destiny of being a franchise quarterback for this team. Like that hasn't been realized to this point. And so there is some added pressure, and I think Shedeur is built to navigate that, which is why if he's there at 33 to start day two, sign me up. I'm there. I want him. He should be the pick. I'd say he's worthy enough of a first-round pick if the Browns are picking pretty much anywhere else. And so because of that, like if that scenario were to happen, and it sounds like it could, I'd run to the podium and take Shedeur Sanders at 33 overall. But I understand everyone's in their camp with the quarterback they like the most at this point. Maybe you like Milroe. Maybe you like Dart. Maybe you like Shuck later on in the draft. Whatever it might be, I get why you're in your camp. I'm in mine. Shedeur Sanders would be my pick at 33 if he somehow makes it that far. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it's something I think that bears discussing because as we talk about him getting past 9 and out of the top 10, it's a realistic possibility that he ends up late in the first round. And if nobody trades up to get him, there the Browns would be day 2 to be able to potentially pull the trigger. Speaking of the quarterback position, after yesterday's show where I mocked the Browns taking 2 quarterbacks, somebody had an interesting comment on the idea of questioning why the Browns would do something like that. I'll explain some more on why taking 2 quarterbacks is smart. Coming up next in the Locked On Browns podcast. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena and with Game Time, and you can be part of the action without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Last year, I used Game Time for the first time when I bought tickets to see Ohio State, Michigan, and while we were disappointed by our experience because of the result of the game, I got to say I saw the national championship Buckeyes in person last year, which is an awesome memory. And now Game Time is my go-to app for buying tickets. In fact, I just bought tickets to a concert for my wife's birthday a couple weeks ago. Last-minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Their lowest prices guaranteed means I never have to worry about overpaying. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time, last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, so yesterday I was posed an interesting sort of pushback on my mock draft about taking 2 quarterbacks. And for those of you who forgot what it might have been like, or if you're tuning in today and you didn't catch yesterday's episode, I'll throw it up here real quick. This was my mock draft from Monday, my final mock draft Monday here going into draft week. And yes, you'll notice I have the Browns taking 2 quarterbacks. Jalen Milroe at 67 in the 3rd round, which maybe not even be possible because I do think the run on quarterbacks is coming in the 2nd round. You'll notice I didn't take Shedeur Sanders at 33, as I just talked about earlier, because he didn't fall to 33. He actually, I think, went in this draft to the Jets or something crazy in the top 10. I don't remember off the top of my head. But regardless, this is how it sort of played out. And you'll notice at pick 216 in the 6th round, I took a 2nd quarterback in Kurtis Rourke out of Indiana. And so the pushback that I got here was on the via the YouTube channel. Nobody Cares WYT chimed in and said they traded a 5th rounder for Kenny Pickett and signed Flacco. They're not carrying 4 quarterbacks, so why would they draft 2? This is pointless. You don't draft a QB to hide on your practice squad, squandering the cheap rookie contract. So by drafting 2, you're saying they're cutting Flacco or trading Pickett for a future day 3 pick, which is also pointless. This doesn't seem very well thought out to be a final mock draft. So I'm going to push back on it not being very well thought out, because I tend to agonize over these mock drafts every single time to avoid as much scrutiny as possible when I come on this platform and talk about them. I will admit and be candid here with you. I agonize over these picks because I want to make the most prudent decisions for the team that you guys, that you listening, will be on board with when I sort of reveal these here on the show. But regardless, here's the thing. So the point on the contract is a fair one. Like the idea that you draft a guy late, they're on a cheap rookie contract. You don't stash that guy in your practice squad and nix the contract, right? I understand where he's coming from with that comment specifically. But here's what I'll say. More bites at the apple. And that's my thought process here. I also will say this. Browns always carry 4 quarterbacks in the offseason. During the season, no, he's right. They will not carry 4 quarterbacks during the season. So he's validated in that. Like, they will cut somebody, they will move on from somebody by the end of training camp. But I don't see it as a problem to have 2 young guys in this room for the majority of the next, 4 months? April to May, May to June, June to July, July to August, and seeing what happens. Like the worst case scenario is Kurtis Rourke and your other rookie have great camps, and you got to decide, okay, maybe we got to trade Kurtis Rourke for a day 3 pick or something like that. Or maybe we got to trade Kenny Pickett, as he sort of alluded to, for a different pick. I don't know. Like, if that's the worst case scenario, you'll take it. And I understand why people are going to look and say, like, why would you keep 2 rookies and like Joe Flacco? Why'd you keep 2 rookies and Kenny Pickett after you traded for Kenny? Like, I understand some of those complications and questions when it comes to, like, you're drafting a guy, you'd like to maximize that contract that you're getting with the player. But that doesn't prohibit teams from taking quarterbacks all the time late in the draft, and or taking multiple quarterbacks sometimes in the draft to just kind of see what plays out. I view it as, again, multiple bites at the apple, but also a good problem to have. Who's ever said that it's a bad problem to have multiple quarterbacks that you're sort of choosing between keeping, or multiple quarterbacks you're sort of choosing between at the end of training camp? Who earns the roster spots? Who do we want to keep? Who do we want to maybe trade for something else? And that is a scenario I could see happening. Like, if Kurtis Rourke, if this draft played out as I had it, and you end up with Kurtis Rourke as like a 6th rounder, and then you're standing there at the end of training camp and he played well enough that you're like, well, we'd like to keep him, but there's just no room on the roster. To this commenter's point, you're not going to carry forward during the season. Why not try to trade him? Andrew Berry did that several years ago with Josh Dobbs. He traded him at the very end of training camp and set the stage for basically that was the year they only carried 2 quarterbacks. They had Deshaun, and they had Dorian Thompson-Robinson was the primary backup. And then when Deshaun got hurt, they had PJ Walker in the practice squad. They had to promote him. And then that spiraled into the Joe Flacco situation at the end of the 2023 season, where he leads them to the playoffs as a free agent and, balls out the way he did. Now he's back. So it's not like we haven't seen this before from Andrew Berry. Yes, you'd rather keep the guy on the rookie contract that's cheap, 6th rounder. I get all those things. But having all these guys kind of competing to earn the job, and then seeing what sort of fruit is birthed out of it, like, I don't understand why that would be anything that people would be upset about or not understand in the grand scheme of things. It's more bites at the apple. How many times do we hear the quote about, I would take a quarterback every year if I don't have one? Well, in this instance, the Browns take 2. And as I said yesterday in talking about the mock draft, Andrew Berry did have those comments at the owners' meetings that the group will probably skew younger in general. And so understanding that as well, having 2 rookies in there would scream skewing younger. Again, maybe they don't keep both. But if you end up using a 6th-round pick and a quarterback and it doesn't pan out, and yeah, maybe you do release him and he ends up being a practice squad guy, is that a little bit frustrating? I guess. But are we really going to be upset about like a 6th-rounder? I guess everybody gets upset that time of year about guys who were drafted and then don't make the team. So I guess there's always some crowd out there that's going to be upset about it. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal. If you took a shot and if it didn't turn into anything, it didn't turn into anything. It's just trying to throw more darts at the board at the quarterback position and see what comes out of it. There's nothing wrong with for a team that's going to have an open competition at quarterback anyway. There's nothing wrong with seeing what 2 rookies can kind of do in that capacity or in that environment. And if it leads to you acquiring draft capital in the end, that's just all the better once the situation sort of plays itself out by the end of summer. So I'm sticking to my guns on this. I think the Browns should actually consider drafting 2 quarterbacks, especially if they're going to stick with all the picks that they have. I mean, they have 3 6th-rounders at this point. At some point, you use those on like position groups that maybe give you more upside or maybe give you a higher potential to net something in return if you were to trade something. And quarterback is the biggest of all of them. So for me, yeah, I'm on board with drafting 2. I think they maybe should draft 2 quarterbacks, given all the late round picks that they have. You take a flyer on one, why the hell not? Speaking of draft night, it could present the perfect opportunity to potentially trade Greg Newsome. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus Max, and more. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. I can tell you, we have Fire TV sticks on all of the devices in our house, all the televisions in our house. It's our go-to platform for streaming at home. And to know that you can turn it into an Xbox makes it even more of a perk for anybody that wants to also join the Fire TV fan club. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. What are the chances Greg Newsome gets traded on draft night or during draft weekend is a valid question that I know some people are going to be sort of pondering here in the coming days and once the draft sort of gets rolling. And I've been banging the drum for the idea that the Browns should absolutely consider trading Greg Newsome. We've heard the rumors about him getting moved for a couple years now that they would consider it. And this is the year it feels like especially this year where he's due $13 million. He's going into the last year of his rookie deal. It's that fifth-year option year. It's all guaranteed to him. And he's one of the only players on the roster, maybe the only player on the roster, who has no dead cap tied to him. Like you move on from him, you don't have to pay any money out to him in dead cap unless it's like a release because he's guaranteed this money this year. So if you trade him, it gives you a chance to essentially free up $13 million in cap space instantly for yourself. And that's huge for a Browns team that's in such a dicey cap situation. Having an extra $13 million could go a long way. So yes, I have been saying this is the offseason in particular. They should be exploring this. The biggest thing is, though, there has to be a market. There has to be somebody willing to take on $13 million for a player that, I mean, listen, the Browns aren't going to re-sign him. I think that's pretty clear. And like it makes sense for them to move on, but somebody has to be willing to take on the contract for a guy who's played most of his career in the nickel spot, which isn't a premium position when it comes to corners. Like you don't get paid to be massively to be a nickel corner. You got to be one of the outside guys. And maybe there's a team that would be willing to put Greg Newsome outside. And so it'd be worth it to them to see it, give it a shot for a year, see what he brings to the table. And then maybe that team would give him a contract extension. But as things stand right now, like you got to convince somebody to eat $13 million on Greg Newsome, who obviously is coming off of a hamstring injury as well and has only really played nickel corner, and see if somebody's willing to do that. I don't know that trade partner exists at this point. Could something kind of force it on draft night? Of course, maybe that would be sort of a part of a package that you would use to move up in the draft. But you also got to wonder about like how much money a team is willing to take on. Teams have kind of figured out their cap space at this point. So there's some other hurdles to clear there that make it complicated. Andrew Berry was asked about this last week, and he basically said like they're not looking to trade any veterans, going into draft weekend at this point. But he gave his usual tagline of, I wouldn't rule it out completely because let's just face it, he's never going to rule out anything completely because he understands that they want to keep all options on the table and make it understand that they're always willing to dance with somebody if the right partner comes along and, is offering the right things. So I understand his perspective on it. Because of his comments, I feel less inclined to believe they're going to sort of swing a trade for Greg Newsome. It doesn't make it impossible, but I'm banking on it probably not happening and him being here as part of the Browns' plans, at least in 2025. What's interesting about that, though, is, as I've talked about before, if Travis Hunter really is the pick at 2, and it certainly feels like it's trending that direction, then that would indicate that like you need to find a spot for him on defense. And I've thrown this idea out there before that nickel feels like the spot where you can get away with rotating a guy more so than the outside spots. Now, maybe Martin Emerson, but like Denzel Ward, we know when Denzel Ward is healthy, he's not leaving the field. Like he's out there in that number 1 cornerback spot every single snap if he's healthy. Now, I know there's questions about that because he's had his fair share of concussions and things over the years. But when he's healthy, he's out there. You don't want him leaving the field. This team, despite how Martin Emerson played last year, still feels very they feel very good about the future of Martin Emerson Jr. and believe that he has a chance to still be really successful in this league. I've kind of put it like this. His rookie year was great. Last year, sophomore year, not so great. But if he's somewhere in the middle, that's still a solid corner that you could have out there in the field opposite of Denzel Ward. And if the primary goal is to play Travis Hunter on offense anyway, you don't want him out there as on almost every snap on defense, even if he wants to do that. And so understanding that, I do feel like nickel would be a place where you could set him up for success and rotate him in and allow him to play that spot while also, rotating him with like a Cameron Mitchell or something like that if he moved on from Greg Newsome. But the problem right now is you have such a log jam there. Now, maybe that's what they want, because if they're going to use him on offense more so anyway, maybe they want to keep him off of defense as much as possible and make that something he tries later on in his career. We'll see. But for now, that's the one spot that I feel like makes the most sense if you're trying to get him some spots on defense without disrupting like what the state of your sort of cornerback situation is right now all that much. I could see that being where he fits. Now, the problem is Travis Hunter isn't he's a slighter guy. He's not, I don't know that you want him going up against tight ends out of the slot, but that's where you could also pick and choose personnel wise. Like if a team sends out 3 receivers or 4 receivers, okay, now we want him out there as a nickel. If they're sending out just a tight end, now we pull him off. We put somebody else out there. Maybe that person remains Greg Newsome because that's where he's played anyway. And obviously, it doesn't seem like they're going to trade him. But with him there right now, it kind of goes back to the drafting 2 quarterbacks thing in a sense. It's a good problem to have too many corners. But if there's something necessitated itself that you can move him, it's an easy yes for me because of the money that you save and because Travis Hunter can do multiple things for you. I think it gives you a chance to really, utilize him the way that he wants to be used, at least on some capacity, even though he's going to be majoring in offense and minoring in defense here in Cleveland. Again, assuming he's the pick of 2, which feels like that's the direction the winds are blowing. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thank you for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. There's more to come this week, including the worst case scenario and best case scenario for the Browns on draft night. Hit that subscribe button to make sure Locked On Browns is your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out our Locked On NFL mock draft leading up to draft night. You can also keep it local by checking out Locked On Cavs and Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. Peace.